Hey everybody, the new collab is here. We have so many wind units, oh my god. I want to talk about briefly the new units that are coming in. I won't do a formal tier list update because none of them are super PvP relevant, but today I want to talk a little bit about the history of PvP and give some of my suggestions for ways we can make PvP a little more interesting. So we'll start by talking about the new units. We have Nebris. Nebris is mostly a PvE unit, but she might have a small place as a niche counter to if there are ever units that don't bring defense on their attack. She can do really well because her AoE on her base skin or base costume is incredibly strong, hitting an entire column. So even if they put units in the front and the back, she'll still hit both of them, and so it's harder to hide units. And she also does a significant self buff, so even though she can't do almost anything against a unit with defense, she doesn't have shred like Rubia does, or you know, ignores defense like Justia or something, she can do really well against units that don't have defense. So I'm not sure exactly where she'll go. I want to wait a little bit, but she seems okay. Hikage is the only other unit really worth talking about for PvP. I think a lot of us were hoping that she'd do something interesting with her 12 hit. You know, it's nice that she gets rid of the Justia, you know, the 4 evasion and the made Rubia 3 evasion, but just giving you a bunch of combo stacks for 3 SP from one unit isn't enough in my opinion. I think already we have PV Shara, we have Professor Shara, and we have Rubia. We have Pirate Rubia who do incredible amounts of damage and can also get rid of, you know, a Justia or Rubia stacks. So I just don't think she's that great. But if you're a new player, that might be what you have to run. So you can go with it. And then the other two, Yomi and Yazakura, they're just way too expensive. I'm not even worth considering in PvP, so they're purely PvE costumes. Then the focus of the video, I want to talk about what we're doing with PvP and give some suggestions. And the reason I do that is because gacha games are always going to struggle with having end game content for day one players, right? You know, they put out a new story, a new campaign, new character pack or whatever, and that gets gobbled up in one day by day one players. Like our units are too well built and we have too many resources. And so newer players are like, oh wow, this is really difficult or a little challenging, which is fine. But for newer player or for older players, it's like, why did I even think about this? I just flew through this, right? So that's where modes like PvP, modes like Fiend Hunt, means like guild raids, are meant to let the long-term players, you know, and the new players as well, but the long-term players really have a chance to, you know, flex their understanding of the game mechanics, you know, come up with new strategies, new ways to compete, you know, ways to, and ultimately to flaunt their success again, you know, to other players and say, hey, we're the best, you know, our guild is the best, or you know, I'm the best, or whatever. And so PvP right now does that a little bit, but there's a lot of things I would change in minor ways that I think would improve the quality of the game right now. So to start it all off, I want to first talk about why I think the devs do care about PvP. I know maybe some people think it's kind of an abandoned game mode. They haven't done too many changes. I know in March when they did kind of their major overhaul, they did mention that they weren't going to make any crazy changes because a lot of players liked PvP as the way it was. But they have done quite a bit since the game first released in June 2023, so I wanted to kind of cover over those. So first, they changed the SP changes. It used to be you started with 3 on attack, and I think defense started with 10, and everybody got like 3 around. Like you did not necessarily have 12 SP on your next turn on attack, and so that time it was really hard to kill units on attack. And there were this was back when there were units like Rafina that were absolutely crazy, base Rafina, because nobody had any good gear on their units, and she just like wrecked base with her AoE, and you know, people that had base eclipse just drained you from your SP, and Andrew was really strong. This was a whole different year, or a whole different you know, game mode, but it was really fun back then. You just didn't have a lot of SP to work with on attack. So they did change that to give it 5 SP to attackers, which you know, for better for worse has been the way it's been for the past year. They changed rank rewards. For those of you who complain that this game maybe gives too much to long-term players in Wales, just remember that when the game first came out, you got 130 ancient crystals for first place. I can show you right here, and you only got like 30 if you were gold or diamond or platinum or whatever. So they've since changed it to make it diamonds now, and it only goes from like 2,000 to 1,000. So yeah, it'll be a couple hundred diamonds down from a super high ranking player, but many of them are probably you know, paying more than that back to get those kinds of positions. Not 100% the case, but you can come for yourself with that kind of thinking. So just remember, it used to be super pay to win. Like the top players got incredible amounts of ancient crystals, and now with Evil Castle being relatively easy to full clear with quite a few options across the board, and you don't even need like perfect gear on all of them. I think the Ancient Crystal economy is a lot more balanced. You just need to push, forward on Last Night and Evil Castle, and again, there's guides for that kind of thing. But there's a lot more parity in that kind of sense, such that free-to-play players don't have to feel like they're like super left behind. You just need to work really hard at hitting those thresholds really early. And then they added the replay system. Again, replay system's been hella bugged. I think it still is to this day. You see the replay says you won, but you didn't win in match. You don't know why. There've been a ton of different theories. Oftentimes, I think one of the leading theories that I remember confirming, at least a couple of specific instances, was where the game wasn't correctly calculating in the server's version of the game of the match that was fought. They weren't correctly using the seasonal additional elemental damage. I think was one of the main culprits potentially, but there might be other things at play too, and it's just been a little bit buggy, but they did release it. And again, I say that because this game was kind of released in a beta state. Honestly, there were a lot of missing quality of life features, so getting replay system early was kind of nice. Then in September we got the skip function, which was also nice for players that didn't want their phone to be sitting there just absolutely heating up for a whole hour as they're running 40 full PvP fights. So it was really bad, so that was nice. And again, that has come with its own slew of bugs as well. Skip function, I think there are quite a few bugs. I think Grand was involved. I can't remember all of them. You could go through and see people's previous bug reports, but skip function had its issues as well. They did also add the costume to the PvP shop, which is really nice. They made it cheap enough that just about any player can get it if that's all they buy from the costume shop or from the PvP shop. They added win rate stats in October. Hasn't been super influential, but was nice. I wish we had that from the beginning. And then in February 2024 is when they started making major changes. They didn't do too much between October and February. The main thing was that they added 80 Diana, and they added Bunny Eclipse, which was pretty influential for the meta. But aside from that, the potentials change when they started giving units potentials was absolutely crazy. And this is where they tried to do they did a lot of balancing. And as you would know, if you were a physical main and you're like, wait, Lathlov got 3 10% bonuses, and B Helena got 2 20s and a -1 SP, like what the heck? And it's probably well deserved, but it did feel bad for some units, and other units went absolutely crazy. Like Celia got very much shafted, but Rubia got an incredible amount of bonus shred. Going from 25 to 45 is a huge damage increase compared to little units that got like 10 20 or 30% damage here. It is not the same scale as Rubia being able to shred 20% more shred. Like that was an absolute crazy potential, and so this was their chance to balance units. We also threw like Zenith just way into the meta with her -1 SP and her bonus damage. Like that girl doesn't even need +5, she just needs +3 and full potentials, and she's a menace SP unit. And then in March is when they did kind of their overhaul. It was a mini overhaul, it wasn't a significant one. They had a whole week where they didn't run PvP at all. They added the new Ruby and Sapphire tiers, and I believe that was in an attempt to give players more diamonds on average, so that players who weren't able to make top 1,000, but they were still in the top couple thousand, will get a little bit more rewards and wouldn't just be stuck in platinum or something like that, or diamond if they couldn't quite reach diamond. But the problem was that I think it was Sapphire was the one that there was a point threshold that oftentimes, given the distribution of points, there were actually no players in Sapphire at the end of the season, and they were getting lower rewards than they should have. It took them a couple months to fix that, but when they finally did, I think players were very thankful that they can get a couple 100 more diamonds each season, which is a good thing. They also added upgrade diamonds, which they didn't have to. So every tier you can climb into gave you an extra 50, 60, or 100 or whatever more diamonds, and that's really, really nice for players. And this is especially true because at the beginning of the season, it's very easy for players to get into Grandmaster even with an okay attack. Like you watch some of the attacks you get hit with from players in Grandmaster on the first couple of days, and you're like, what the heck? Like people are running anything and they can stumble their way into Grandmaster, which I think is a good thing because you can get more diamonds and it feels like you could accomplish something. Even if you can't end there in the top 100, just being able to hit it gives you like a lot of players super happy, super excited. I think these were good things. They all just showered players with more diamonds, but they didn't like mechanically change the game all that much to this mode. Again, because as I said, enough players had voted that said they didn't want to change it significantly that they decided not to change PvP significantly. They added some extra shop items too, but there wasn't too much there that was worth getting. There's like the UR geared ticket, which is kind of a scam, and that's just about it. And then they haven't done too much. I mean, they added more potentials throughout April and May, and I don't remember which units got their potentials when, but in September, just recently, they added the cocktail acceleration, which was the final big quality of life, in my opinion, for players, again, that use their phones or something like that don't want to sit there and watch even the skip feature, the first like 20 seconds of the fight for 40 times. They can now just do instant 40 fights and just get the medals. They don't get any rank points. And so if you're like, oh, I'm going to be in diamond or whatever, I'm not going to waste my time, trying to push into a higher rank. You can just get your runs done over with quickly. That way you don't like waste cell phone battery power or have to like sit and run the game on your PC for that amount of time. So super nice as well. And I say all of this just to say that, hey, the devs do make changes for this mode. They're still being aware of it. I'm aware that the devs have limited resources. I'm sure they have teams, they have teams working on costumes, they have teams working on design, they have teams working on like new game modes, and teams working on bug fixes and all these different things. But they are still paying some attention to PvP. And if the people who do that are interested in making other changes, like, I have some suggestions for you. So here are my suggestions. So first, for like permanent changes I would make, I want to make a couple comments about, in my opinion, fairness. This is something that you wouldn't know unless you followed like players that are consistently trying to rank in the top 10, which is usually not me. I'm usually just trying to aim for top 100. But for those that do aim in top 10, there are a couple issues that I think we want to talk about. So first is wider range of opponents. So right now, if you're trying to push for first place, the game only matches you with, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's only against like second, third, fourth, maybe fifth, sixth, and seventh. Like there's a very small band of opponents. I actually don't know if it's based off of your ranking points or based off of the rank itself, but you only have a few range, a small range of opponents. And this means it's very easy for people to band together and try to stifle one person and support another. So for example, if you had a group of 4 friends and you were all, could consistently rank in top 20 if you wanted to, and you said, hey, it's time for this guy to win the end of season. And so at the end, when everybody's doing their pushing, the other 3 make an offense that the one guy's defense beats and make a defense that the guy's offense always beats. You kind of have made this magic coalition that it's really hard for any other player who's not in their own coalition doing their own kind of boosting strategy to compete with, right? And that doesn't feel fair. And the way I think you could fix that is by having matchmaking pit you against a wider range of opponents. I think if you're in first place or second or fifth place, I think it's perfectly reasonable for you to be expected to be attacked by, a player who's 15th or a player who's 30th or a player who's 50th even, especially during the end of the season. Like, all those players have generally strong comps. Like, okay, they're not going to be +5, with full UR4 maximized, min-maxed gear all the way across, fully potentialed, but there's still going to be really strong comps that you could win or lose to. And at the same time, when that happens, just to add a little caveat here, I do think there should be like some kind of minimum RP per win. I don't think you should penalize people on the same note, so that if first place happens to attack like 50th or something like that and they lose, you shouldn't give them like -3 million rank points per loss or something like that. And on the same note, there have been people that have reported, I can show some funny screenshots here, where they're consistently beating players, but because they're like Masters 1 or something, they're getting 0 rank points per win, which is crazy. There's no point in that. So I do think that you could like increase the minimum number of rank points per win, and also decrease like the maximum amount that you can lose. Just make it a little bit less consequential what the difference in ranks is, because at that high of elo, players all have pretty good teams. Every team will have some strengths and weaknesses, but they all have pretty good teams. And then moving on to the balance section, there's 2 things. There's actually a video by that Psyche guy who has like the like nightmare fuel YouTube thumbnail clip when he talked about Browndust 2. He made a comment that I had thought about for a while, and it was really interesting, that he thought that light and dark elements should have elemental advantage when defending against their own element. So light tanks should be able to have get dealt less damage when attacked by a Justia, and dark tanks should be dealt less damage when attacked by an Eclipse. And I think this would be really interesting. I've wanted this for a while, and I think it'd help balance. Now, that being said, I know the devs probably, when they balance characters, they understand a character like Eleanor probably should deal slightly less damage because she's never going to have elemental disadvantage, and like Shara maybe can deal a little bit more because she can be countered by a wind tank, right? They probably already incorporate this, but I think it'd be really, really interesting if Gran, who's already an incredibly strong unit, but if she got a little bit stronger when attacked by Justia specifically, or any other light DPS. And on the same token, if Seer, who's she's seen some play recently on attack as a turtle comp, but if Seer was quite stronger, much stronger against a unit like Eclipse, I think would be really interesting. So that's one thing I would make, one change that I would make. And another one that I would make that's related to the fairness topic that I talked at the beginning about is team lock. And I don't know exactly how this will be implemented, but this is just an idea. This is just me spitting ideas here. Feel free to shoot at me in the comments. But I think it'd be interesting if, instead of allowing players to constantly change their offense and defense to counter specific strategies all the time, which is what a lot of players, especially ones trying to be in the top 20 or 30, are doing. They're like looking, I lost against this one guy, I'm going to change it so I can beat him now while beating the other guys, and I'm going to change my defense to counter this one guy who keeps attacking me. Instead of having this like rat race at the end, I think it'd be interesting if you just lock your team. I don't know when the appropriate time would be. Maybe it's the next to last reset, maybe it's like 3 hours before end of season, something like that, but some point where your team can no longer change. You can't change a gear on it, you can't change anything, and you can only attack or defend from there based off of what you have, and you can just choose how many more times you want to attack. I think that would really help with the idea of letting the best team win. The best team that is most adapted to attack all the people, and again with a wider range of opponents, I think that would make the game a lot more fun, that you would know that the player who was in first place, again, there's always going to be some benefit to spending money on the game because you buy more wine and you're more willing to spend diamonds on wine, whereas a free-to-play player wouldn't. But at least you have a slightly better sense that the player who got first place, I don't want to say deserved it, because it's just a game mechanic, it's a design decision, but really had a team that did well against all the other strong PvP teams, and wasn't just one that happened to beat the few that were around them. And then for some minor quality of life stuff, so attack and defense PvP gear. First of all, devs absolutely nailed this with Guild Raid. Great job to them. They don't always release things without bugs, as anybody who's played the game would be more than well aware, and they did a really good job with this. Attack and defense PvP gear, I can't tell you how many times I think Therese on attack does really well, but I can't run Therese on attack when I run Therese on defense because they want different gear, right? Therese on attack, using her base, wants crit defense and crit damage and all that jazz, and on defense she wants tank and just to use her beach costume, and then she wants to die, right? And similarly, players that play Rue, maybe they want to do Rue kick on attack with really high crit damage and all that, and then on defense they want to have a super tanky one. You can't do that in the game right now because you only have one gear on a unit at the same time. So they did that already really well with Guild Raid. I wish they added it for PvP for attack and defense separately. I presume it wouldn't be too hard, but I don't know how all the programming, how this game is made. So just a wish. And this has been asked a ton of times by other players, but I want to echo it again so it's not forgotten. And then pausing the game. So this is kind of a personal thing, and this is actually something I wish was across the entire game, but I want it specifically for PvP. If you pause the game right now, it shows, do you want to change how often you see the costumes, and do you want to change the volume? Now, changing the volume is nice, but it blurs the entire thing behind it, and oftentimes I want to screenshot a particular thing, but I can't do that because if I pause right when I want to see some damage number, or I want to see some cool pose or something like that, or I want to see my Justia hitting 4 units or something like that, the whole screen is blurred. And so I wish there was, like in many games, there'll be a little icon, an eye icon somewhere. You can click it and it'll remove the UI interface so that you can see where you actually paused it. I think that'd be really good for the game. And then lastly, offline attacks. So this would be a little bit of a balance change, but we do know that since the reset is the same time for every player, for me it's 8 a.m. because I'm on Pacific time in the United States. I think it'd be a beneficial addition to the game if you could queue offline attacks. It'd keep it pretty simple, something like X number of minutes before reset, start attacking, and you have to throw in 100 wine or something, and it'll just do it until the 100 wine's done, or it'll give you, refund you the difference. So if you want to start 30 minutes before end of game, or end of season, or 100, 2 hours before end of season, or whenever, you could just queue it up, and you didn't have to be in the game. The server would just attack for you. I don't know how reasonable this is. Somebody who understands game design can probably tell me that's a horrible idea, but I think it'd be really good from a balance perspective, so that players who want to sleep in a little bit, like me on a Sunday morning, I don't want to get up at 6 o'clock to start fighting in the fields, and for players who if they live in Europe and it's middle of the day and they have to go out, they're going out to do shopping or whatever, it just adds a lot of convenience to be able to schedule attacks. I do think that you should make these, if these attacks were done, it should be slightly slower than the manual attacks that you do in game. So I think in game it takes 22, 23, 24 seconds an attack, depending on preemptives and how many units attack and all that. But I think it would be possible to do something so that's slightly less efficient, but you can still do it and not feel like you completely abandoned PvP that week, because there's a lot of people in the Discord who are like, oh, I forgot about PvP this week, or I forgot to wake up, or my alarm didn't wake me up, and it's on a Sunday, so it feels bad. But that's just a little thing that I'd like to request. I'd like to talk a little bit about the maybe seasonal changes that you could add to the game that might add a little bit of spice, a little bit of variety. These are not all great ideas. These are just ideas. So, feel free to chew me out in the comments, say these suck. But yeah, I'm just throwing out ideas here. So first, this is a fun one for me. Champion gets to ban 1 character. This would go crazy. I think it'd add a lot of value to being first place, but if you were first place, when reset happens, you get a certain amount of time to log in and you pick 1 character, and nobody can put that character in their PvP anymore. So if you got first place and you're like, I don't want to see Rue for a whole season, I don't want to see Justia, I don't want to see Helena, whatever, you could do that, and people could not use that character. I think it'd be interesting. Maybe you could have some limit that it can't be the same character, you know, more than once a month or something like that. I don't know, but you could make it super fun. So that one, getting first place is super meaningful, not just in diamonds and the reward, but also you get to change PvP the next season. But also there'd be variety, right? You'd have to come up with comps. There's some really strong comps right now that feel really frustrating to deal with on defense, and similarly for offense. And so removing Grand or something like that could be really fun. Another one would be must play one character from the current season. So if it's the wind season, you have to use a wind unit on your attack and on your defense. I think that could be really interesting. It'd force, you know, players to find something interesting. Maybe they're running Gray, or maybe they're running Gint, or if they're a super new player, right? I think that could be fun. And then another idea would be must play a non 5-star. This could be really good. You know, units like Sammy, units like Aranis, units like Emma, units like Cry might get a little bit of time back in the limelight when you force people to not just use all 5 stars, super strong attack and defense comps. I think that could be really fun. And then popular costume ban, this is probably one of the more often recommended ways to add variety, is something like, you know, the most popular X number of costumes used in the past season, maybe it's 2 or 3, cannot be used. So add a little bit of variety so we don't see as many PBJSDs and Bunny Eclipses and, you know, homolathals and all that jazz. So I think this could be something really interesting. It's probably the most popular, I would say, in terms of like support from the community. Some of the other ones they might think are a little crazy. And then lastly, this is just my fun idea. I would do something Scrabble style. And what I mean by that, in Scrabble, if you use a letter that's not common, you get extra points when you make a word, right? So if you use a letter like J or X or Z, you get extra points in your word than if you just use like A and E. And so I have no clue how this would be implemented or balanced or etc., but it could be fun. If you used a unit that was rarely used, like based on the rarity of that unit, you could get a little bit more victory points, right? So for example, like Alec is not a popular unit, so if you were winning with Alec, you get a little more points than somebody who won with like Justia, right? You could just get an extra point or something for having a rarely used unit. Might encourage people to try some different units, and maybe they discover a new meta, maybe a new style, maybe they have some new ways to deal with some of the popular meta comps. So I think that could be really fun. And mechanics wise, I have some ideas like changing the SP economy a little bit. I feel like 566 is relatively balanced right now, but you could try like, what if we went back down to 3, or what if we went down to 4? How much should we give defense, right? Obviously it'd be less, but how much should we give them so that the game still feels fair and interesting? And now maybe, you know, certain comps are not as strong and other ones are better. Maybe you play more turtle, maybe you play more aggro, depending on the way it swung, but I think that could be really interesting. Yeah, these ones are a little bit crazy, admittedly, but giving all players on offense and defense a little bit of a starting edge card or a little bit of evasion, just to throw off for, you know, some period of time some of the thresholds, right? Like, oh, this unit can always kill this unit in this situation. Well, now maybe they can't if they get, you know, 1 instance of evasion or 1 instance of edge guard, and certain units are better as a result, and it can maybe add a little bit more variety, right? I think that could be really fun. Field size is an obvious one. Now this obviously would be probably resource intensive in terms of like implementation, but I think it would be fun to say like, hey, what if it was still 5 units, but we made it 4 columns wide, or we made it, you know, only 3 rows deep, or something like that, right? You can imagine a million different variations. You could do 5x5 if you really wanted to, like we do for guild raids. Maybe that's too complicated, but some kind of difference in field size so that we could position units a little more differently, right? Maybe units like Bunny Eclipse couldn't just always hit the entire back line because they're, you know, the entire map is only 3 columns wide, right? And then one more idea that I've had for a while is having elemental advantage give you extra durability when you're defending. And this is something that would not affect some units, but it would affect others, because not every unit has elemental advantage in their potentials. But for example, a unit like Rafina has elemental advantage, and so it would be that if she was attacked by a fire unit like a Lathel or whatever, not only would she get reduced damage, but she would also take even less damage based on how much elemental advantage. I don't know how you'd scale it, but what I'm trying to get at is there are oftentimes situations where you have elemental advantage, but it doesn't matter because the attacking unit just has such a high number for their damage, they just kill you through it, right? It feels bad when you're a unit like Leclis and you're tanking a unit like Shara, but Shara just has such high damage from all the buffs given on her that she kills you anyway, right? Or similarly, a unit like Therese or a unit like Glacia who's being attacked by Arubia, and you're like, oh, I have elemental advantage, I should be able to survive in theory, but then she just shreds, 45% of your defense, and it didn't matter that she had elemental disadvantage against you. You can't tank that damage because she's dealing 5x damage because she took away all your defense. So maybe, not every unit has this. Therese doesn't have elemental advantage, but maybe Glacia could, because Glacia has some elemental advantage on her on her disciplinary committee costume. So maybe if she ran that, then she would take even less damage from Rubia, and maybe she could be useful as a counter. I think this could shake up the meta a little bit. I don't think it should be a permanent thing, but it might be something that's fun. Just wanted to get some of my changes that have been in my notes for a while out in a video, get some discussion around it. If you think they're good ideas, or if you think they're crap, feel free to, share in the comments what you think. If you have some other ideas of your own, like I'm sure some of you guys have some great ideas for ways to make PvP a little more exciting in terms of changing mechanics. Again, I don't think this is something that should be like, from season to season, from week to week it changes, but it could be like, hey, for the next month, or hey, for the next 2 months, or this new cycle of all the elements for Fiend Hunt and whatnot, we're going to do this kind of thing. Could be fun to give a little bit of variety, get more discussion, get more players involved, etc. Maybe change the meta a little bit. New units have come into the meta recently that have changed things, so it's not like there's no change, but a little bit of variety is the spice of life. So these are just my thoughts, and yeah, with that, I want to keep this one short, and I have some other videos ideas in the future. I don't want to spoil too much, but I am working on some threshold stuff. I know a lot of players are always interested in like what unit can kill what unit under what conditions, and there's a lot of math that goes into that, and a lot of